This is Fraternal Fanatics. We are covering Daredevil Born Again this time.
Hmm.
Big fans of Daredevil, loved what Netflix did with the character.
Yeah,
So I think we were both very excited to get into this one and anticipating it coming out.
yeah. We were definitely very excited for this one, more so than most of the Marvel properties that are coming out as of late.
Where would you say that love stemmed from? Like what did they do in the Netflix show that like you loved so much that you crave that you were hoping to see again in this new revival of the character?
Well, pacing is number one with Netflix. Like, they did a great job of making one season a very consumable, integrated story. And then they did a great job of making the three seasons work very well together. Um, which is ultimately what Born Again failed to deliver on, I
Yeah,
think.
I mean, so far what we've seen, it feels like very discombobulated and not a coherent story. And when you're looking through the lens of the first season on Netflix, it just felt like such a nice, you had your beginning, middle, and end, and you were tied up that season in a nice bow without leaving too much on the table
Hmm.
unanswered and feeling like you got cheated out of something.
Yeah.
But then they still left enough thread there to pick up season two and season three in a way that they could explore other avenues of the character. But I think they're just missing the mark with Born Again.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like every episode is setting up events for the next episode, and then the finale is just setting up events for a season two that I honestly kind of hope doesn't get greenlit. I mean, I think it already has. I think they're already confirmed for two seasons, but like, I don't see the point. Just
Yeah,
just bury it.
yeah, it's not worked. Maybe this, it was we were optimistic about this character being brought back, and it seemed like the cast was pretty excited to get back together
Yes.
and tell a new chapter of that story. But I just don't think something fell flat along the way, and it just seems like an inconsistent story. Really,
Yeah.
like it felt too drawn out, like you said.
Yeah, and it's
Nothing much
nothing.
happens in like the thick of the season, right? Like it's sets up stuff I thought really well in the first episode,
Mhm.
and then it just kind of drags those bits out too long, leading up to just a big kind of cliffhanger or penultimate episode at the end where it's like, well, you could have pasted better than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's all. Like, that's the thing. It's no disrespect or disservice to the performances of like Charlie Cox, Vincent D'Onofrio, and like they did as good as they possibly could with the cards they were dealt. But yeah, they it was so poorly paced that anybody watching it, like, I would hope anybody watching it can realize that this is not a complete story, or that this is not like these are not a cohesive sequence of events. It's just a garbled mess.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I don't think acting was the issue. It
Yeah.
was really the story or the writing or wherever they were trying to go with these pieces of, you had what's his face there, the Hush guy who was chopping
Muse,
people
yeah.
up, taking their Muse, thank you,
Who is like a
taking their
completely
blood.
unimportant part
Yeah, it
of
turned
the
out to be
entire
nothing.
series. Yeah.
Makes you wonder whether that was just ham-fisted in from someone else's vision, and then they were like, let's switch it up here, it's not going the way we wanted, and let's scrap that and just tie it up mid-season and have
Yeah.
him leave no real impact beyond like the scene with the therapist, and because Matt and the therapist have, a thing going on, and there's that Daredevil's involved, so
Yeah.
there's the weird kind of tension there. But yeah, it just that felt like something they just passed up on, I guess, and it felt forced and contrived and like it didn't belong in this season. Like if you're gonna focus on Fisk, I don't understand what this Muse guy had to do with it all, unless you were planning on like connecting him to Fisk in some way. But there really wasn't that.
Yeah, because the whole like vigilante task force thing doesn't really come into effect until Muse is no longer an issue.
Muse is just like, I guess I see it as like it's a piece of Fisk manipulating New York City's
Mm-hmm.
population into believing that vigilantes are scum and like the city needs to be protected, and Fisk's vision for, a secure New York is the only way forward, kind of. And that is a good example. Like, he's a psychotic killer who's very gruesome and taking people's blood, draining them and stuff. So it is
Mm-hmm.
a good precedent to set and a good thing to shine a spotlight on to scare people. But it's that, right? It's like fear mongering. But we already knew that about Fisk.
And
That wasn't
it's
like a new revelation where they needed to show us that through Muse. Like,
yeah, they
we're
needed to
terrified of
show
the
his
guy already.
manipulating,
His
his
prowess in
conniving
terms of,
ways. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
his
Except we already
large
knew that.
scale pulling the veil over the city of New York.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess I assume that's, what the intent was with that character, but I wonder what got left, because it just felt like his storyline would ended very abruptly without any real
And
impact
started
beyond what
very
we already knew.
abruptly too.
Yeah.
Like, just we're introduced to him. There's maybe an episode or like an episode and a half, and by the end of that second episode, he's been dispatched with.
And
Like,
even like the threat of, the tension whenever the therapist finds out about who he is and he's kind of holding her hostage, and like I don't really feel as much of a sense of worry for her as we should have, because she was involved with Matt, because there's just not enough. I don't get that relationship between her and Matt. It wasn't fleshed out enough, or it didn't feel natural to me.
yeah,
um
yeah, it was much easier to get behind like him and Karen's connection in the first seasons when that, like, there was those damsel in distress kind of moments. But yeah, I agree with you. I didn't feel that at all for her. I didn't feel anything for her actually. Really, I could not have cared less about her as a character.
no, and like her kind of turn to the dark side and moving, shifting over to Fisk's perspective and not liking vigilantes, and like I just didn't find her character compelling in any way.
Yeah, they didn't spend enough time on. Yeah, they didn't spend enough time on her and Matt's relationship that I, as the viewer, could sit in Matt's shoes and say, yeah, like, yes, I care about this person, or there's a connection here. But
She
it,
just felt like she was just there because she was connected to Fisk. She was connected to
yeah,
Muse, like,
because
and
they
then
needed
she's
some
also
in
having
between.
relations with Matt. So it's like, oh my god, this is like a crazy trifecta of
Yeah, the same way
drama
that,
and stuff. But it didn't play out, or it didn't deliver to that degree in my eyes.
yeah, and it was the same way that Karen was the go between Foggy and Matt and Frank in season two. Like, they keep that's this whole season was just repeating the tropes that worked in seasons one, two, and three, but doing it completely unsuccessfully.
Yeah, everything just fell flat.
Yeah.
I mean, despite all that, I will say I did enjoy episode one in a
Yes.
nutshell.
Yeah. Let's look at it a bit more episodically, and maybe we can kind of see where the
Where it
real
all fell
decline.
apart.
Yeah, exactly. Real decline comes in.
I mean, I was wowed at the opening of the
Yeah.
season. Like, it gave me a really, because of the anticipation we had for it, the opening episode, the opening sequence even was like, holy shit, this is going to be like what we had before, right? Like, this
Yeah.
gets me excited.
Yeah. That opening sequence before, I guess it's before the credits roll in the
Yep.
first
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah.
That is one of maybe the best Daredevil sequences on screen. Like, season one, two, three doesn't matter. I mean, I'm not even gonna get into Defenders because it was so bad, but of all the Daredevil moments, that might be number one. And then they squandered it.
I know, like, it was just like my jaw was on the floor
Yeah,
after after the bullseye stuff, and it was gave me reminiscent vibes of, hallway fight
yeah.
choreograph
The
sequences.
oneer,
It wasn't a hallway, but it was a stairwell, so it was like
close
pretty
enough.
close. And just, yeah, like that, how that played out between the two of them, that fight was brutal and
Mhm.
gruesome and intense and just well shot
Yeah.
and well fought, I guess.
Yeah.
And it really set the tone early for the episode. And there's like immediate setup too, right? With Foggy talking about this case with a fellow colleague.
Mhm.
And that sets up what happens later in the season, the revelation about, Foggy was into this case that had connections to what Fisk was doing, trying to buy off the pier and launder money, um, legally, technically,
Mhm.
through or without any prying eyes, I suppose. So yeah, there's immediate setup there, and then we get the beautiful choreographed fight sequence and Bullseye coming back for revenge, which made sense based on the previous history with the
Mhm.
characters too, right?
And would have been such a great way to, like, put a bow on Bullseye. Like, if they had just killed him there, it's
Yeah,
like, what a great
yeah,
way to start off the season with, like, a Game of Thrones style twist.
yeah, absolutely.
Like,
And it's like you wouldn't expect that if this character's all of a sudden back. He has some unfinished business, and he does, finish some of that business
mhm,
by killing Foggy, but he doesn't get the three of them, I guess. I don't know if he was going for the trio, Matt and Karen as well. But yeah, like he leaves his final mark on Matt and causes him to give up the mantle, but he still should have died there, yeah,
yeah,
instead of
it would
getting
have been
back up.
more impactful if he died.
Yeah.
Like, if Matt tossed him off that ledge and he died, it just there would have been more meaning to Matt hanging up the cowl, and as a as a result of that, him having to put it back on later in the season.
Yeah, it's like Batman making that choice to kill someone,
Yeah,
right? Like it's of course he's gonna struggle with.
coming back from that.
Yeah, I think maybe that's where that fell flat too. Like Matt's whole decision to drop the mantle and the time jump 1 year later after he effectively kills Bullseye but
Mhm.
doesn't kill Bullseye. Like that just would have played better
If
if he
he,
died.
yes, yes,
Because then that struggle is more real, right? Like he really doesn't want to return to that persona. He really doesn't want to let the devil out, but
hmm
inevitably he's going to have to. It's just that struggle feels more real if Bullseye is dead
if
and
there's,
he's
yeah, there's a real
made that
consequence there.
mistake. Yeah,
Because that's the thing. The only thing, Bullseye just went from prison, out of prison, back to prison
yeah,
with, some more major injuries like he had before the first time he was in prison. Like, nothing has actually changed.
yeah,
That was the thing with, like, between this, maybe not necessarily the first episode, I guess, but with Daredevil Born Again and the Netflix show, it's like nothing has changed. You've shown in these 3 seasons all these impacts, everything that's changed, and then you jump into this, sort of continuation, sort of not canon continuation, and everything is the fucking same as it was at the beginning of season 1, minus some better job opportunities. Like,
yeah. The first episode could have been unreal. It's almost like they undid what they were trying to set up by just that sequence alone of
yeah,
Bullseye getting up after an intense battle with Matt and him not pulling any punches, him wanting to kill him, and then effectively making the decision to kill him by
mhm,
throwing him off a 20-story building.
yeah,
So yeah, I think that's maybe was the first indication of like, maybe we should have some concern about how willing they are to tell a good story and not just dick us around here.
hmm
But just one more thing I had too about the fight sequence at the beginning between the two of them. I love how they shot it with Matt's enhanced senses, where he's hearing Foggy's heartbeat slowing
hmm
down as he's bleeding out, and then mixed with Karen's heartbeat speeding up as she's like getting frantic about
yeah,
trying to save him and probably knowing that he's gonna die or wondering whether that's the case as his blood is all over her hands. That was like top notch for
yeah.
me too. I loved that.
Yeah, great representation of his abilities. Like, I know there's a lot of superpowers are easier than others to portray on screen, and Matt's senses obviously being one of the probably most difficult to pull off.
Right.
But yeah, that was a great, great use of that.
I loved it. Like it really like drove home the intensity and the emotional impact of that too, right? Like as a viewer, you're like, we love Foggy,
Yeah,
and we're like
he's the
hearing
man.
him
He's the mighty duck.
slowly taking his last breaths, just like heartbeat fading. It's tragic. It's awful, and
Hmm.
you feel like Karen in that moment, right? Like you're just like desperate for someone to come and help him,
And
because
you
it
have
came as such a shock too.
the same rage as Matt going after Bullseye. You
Absolutely.
feel that too with every punch,
Yeah,
and
you understand why Matt is gonna about to make that decision to
yeah,
throw him off the
yeah.
roof
The
and make
viewer
that
wants to
final.
toss him off that roof.
And again, we just feel cheated of that because he gets up afterwards and doesn't die. It's just
Yeah,
like that was the moment to kill him.
that
You
was it.
That was the right decision to make there. I don't know why you deviated from that,
Yeah.
because there's no real impact from Bullseye after that, really. Like no like significant. I know he has some scenes later on, but there was just no point in not killing him there in my eyes.
Hmm.
I'm sure you agree, yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
But I mean, lots of setup in this episode too. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, like we've said, you're setting up Daredevil's eventual revival, right? Like he's I'm not worthy of this mask anymore. I'm not worthy of this mantle. What that means. So things are going to have to happen in the season where he is pushed into letting the devil out again.
Hmm.
So you have that set up immediately, which is like a good story to tell as long as you tell it well, which they didn't. You got setup of Mayor Fisk really early on. We know what he's capable of. We know this is a long con. Like he's trying to dress
Manipulate.
himself up as something that he's not,
Yeah.
so that he can gain the trust of the city and get the foothold of power he needs.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that was a like they spend a criminally low amount of time on Fisk's campaign and how that like how Matt grapples with that and tries to internally figure out like what can I do from my position, not as Daredevil, to stop this from happening, and the reality being that really there's nothing he can do as Matt, as much as he might try to do so, as much as he might force his way in with the connections he has as a lawyer. He just, yeah, he
yeah,
can't.
he's really thrown himself into like faith in the justice system at
Hmm.
this point, right? Like after rejecting the mask, and he does like in the Bullseye court sentencing or whatever. He's like, let justice take its course, right?
Yeah.
That's the only way to get true, to move on from this in a meaningful way or whatever. When it's like, no, yeah, you know, another way. There's a meaningful way to
Yeah.
move on.
Yeah.
Like he's just so resistant to that at that point, which makes sense. Obviously, like
Mm,
he's struggling with whether vigilante justice is the right way.
yeah.
So it does feed into kind of Fisk's fear mongering of, yeah,
100%.
vigilantes are not good for the city or
Yeah.
not the answer.
Yeah. They should have spent more time on that emotional reaction, or like, that's a bad way to put it, but on that dynamic of Matt trying to figure out what to do about this and realizing that there's nothing he can. It's just like,
I think they only should have, that
yeah,
disappeared with the Muse shit in the
exactly.
early episodes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to say. Like they should have, if that had been the entire focus, it like him killing Bullseye would have been more impactful when Fisk actually does get elected, because we've seen Matt has tried everything he can do to stop this from happening, and it still happens. That's impactful. It's not, yeah, let's just skip over the Fisk stuff. He's gonna get elected anyway because that's what we need to do for the story. So yeah, just distract him for a couple episodes with a fucking bank robbery, and yeah.
Yeah, it is funny that they are on very, I guess, similar mentalities early on, Fisk and Matt, because again, Matt is resistant of using his own form of vigilante justice, and then he meets Muse, and like obviously he can't deny that not necessarily that he's a vigilante, but obviously Fisk likes to frame it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't deny that that's like feeding into the narrative that it's probably not a good idea to be Daredevil. So they are on similar wavelengths at the beginning, which is interesting, but they're
Mm-hmm.
both like harboring those feelings of, listen, technically, in a roundabout way, we both kind of want the same thing here. But if you step out of line, which I know you will, and this goes both ways, then shit's gonna go down. Like they're both fully, that diner scene is fully transparent of that, right? Like
Yeah.
they both know what each other is doing, and they're not shy about saying that, just not necessarily completely overtly.
Mm-hmm.
So it is. I do like the tension built in that diner scene too. I thought that was a good indication of the beginning of things starting to spiral between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it just that ham-fisted few episodes of just Muse and that kind of leading nowhere was distracting.
Yeah. And yeah, and that meeting in the diner was such a good, like them going for coffee. If there was more of that, if they had just cut out the fat and had more of those interactions, because I know we had a couple of them, like in the diner being one, and then obviously at the whatever event gala that was towards the end of the season, these coy mass conversations that they have in public, like that is what we're looking for. Or sorry, that makes it sound like it's a fan service thing to give it that. That is what it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this story is about, the dynamic between Fisk and Matt. That's what this whole fucking thing is about. But there's no we get that one scene and we get another scene like 6 episodes later of them interacting. And that's mostly it.
Yeah,
How could you seriously tell me that Fisk is the primary antagonist in this show when that's the case?
yeah, I mean, it just at a certain point, it just feels like, okay, you're using this whole season to just lead up to whatever next season, the confrontation, the real confrontation between Matt and Fisk, and it's like, why can't you just pace this season's story to have that happen
Mm-hmm.
naturally, right? Instead of wasting so much time with this innocuous bullshit that has no bearing on the larger narrative between Matt and Fisk, which is what we care about or what this season should be, which is what you've set up in the first episode.
Yeah, the first 20 minutes have given us exactly what that story could have been, or given us the lead up to exactly that great story.
Mm-hmm.
But they fumbled on that
Just drop the
somehow.
ball.
Yeah.
Yeah. And more setup like with Adam too, like the whole rift between him and Vanessa. Um I felt like it was a little time wasty too, a bit. Like again, we get it. Like we know that Fisk is obsessed with Vanessa, and obviously after not having seen each other for this many years, like I don't know, we just didn't need to see like
Who cares, right? Like, who cares about the relationship between Fisk and Vanessa? We've been over that.
yeah.
We've spent plenty of time on that. It's not particularly important. Their relationship doesn't really matter. What matters is that at this point, they're working as a team for this, like to, or working as partners
Yeah, I
in
did like
charge
how
of
they
this
sort of
organization. That's the
equalize
only
that
thing that
dynamic
matters.
professionally.
Yeah, and they successfully established that in that very first meeting when Vanessa's, sitting at the head of the table and
Yeah, we
with all
know
the
she's
gangsters there.
while Wilson's been gone, like she's filled that void and
Yeah,
like to a high degree, like she's got a good thing going here.
yeah.
And Fisk
If
is respectful of that, I guess.
if they had just shot that scene a little differently, and from my perspective, what I would think is Fisk comes out of that elevator as he does with that very imposing shot over his shoulder. He steps out of the elevator and he just stands in the corner and waits for this meeting to finish up. That imposition looming, his presence looming over this table, but Vanessa still in control of that meeting, finishing this up, doing whatever. fucking beautiful portrayal of their dynamic, establishes that they're partners in this and that there's a mutual trust between them. And it's done in 30 seconds with no words. And
Yeah.
that's all the time they had to spend on it. And they could have saved the rest of the fucking season for Fisk's relationship with Matt or Vanessa's relationship with Matt, not their relationship with each other, because it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, I think they should have feeded instead of like a creating a rift between the two of them with Adam. I think it would have been cooler to see like they're equal partners, like you were saying. Like Vanessa's filled this void, she's carried on business. Fisk is like, if anything, that like makes her allure loom larger for
Exactly.
him.
Yeah.
So then they really go that route, and it's like, Vanessa's like a cutthroat, you know, businesswoman who's pulling strings just as much as Fisk was, and he's extremely manipulative and cunning.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to him being a hulking mass of a physical presence, right? Like intimidation factor, like that's really, you can see why they would have a stronghold on the city at that point, like regardless of any factions that are looking to push back
Mm-hmm.
once Fisk grasps power municipally as mayor, and Vanessa's got her operation on lock with money laundering and whatever
The whole
else,
Red Hook
drug trade and Red Hook, the beer
operation. Yeah.
operation. Yeah. Like that's just that's a power couple right there,
Yeah.
right? Like as opposed to just this like lovers quarrel about Vanessa being unfaithful to Fisk because while he was gone, she had not spurned advances from this Adam guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it felt like a waste of time.
Yeah. 100%. Because by the end of the season, it's the same as like the bullseye thing. By the end of the season, we're in the exact same position that we were at the beginning, which is they are now together. They do have an understanding of each other, and they're partners in this thing.
Yeah, just do that in the first episode and then tell a good story about how
Around that,
they're, yeah.
that's more
Now
intriguing to
Matt
me.
has to take on not only Fisk but Vanessa too. She's just as much of a threat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just fumbles all around.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the first episode, and I guess the series as a whole, it was quite representative of real world politics too, which is, I'm
Yeah.
sure, something they were going for, right? Like a microcosm of what's going on politically in the world. I did get that sense a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
that it
There's
was
certainly a
social
bit of
commentary,
commentary, yeah, on real events.
mirroring, yeah, reality.
Yeah.
So I will give them some credit for that. I do like, I don't know, maybe that's a stylistic choice for me. Maybe some people don't like when stories are too like telling of
Period.
real world events, and then those, yeah,
Period
reality
specific.
finding its way in, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like that. I find it's like
It was,
fun to kind of make connections to reality, I guess. So yeah, and just to cap off episode one, like I did love the end too, like Matt being basked in the flashing tail lights, red tail lights of a
mm-hmm.
car.
Yeah.
Um, showing the devil is still inside of him,
Yeah. Yeah. The
waiting to be
waiting to be released.
released
Yeah.
from its cage. So yeah,
Yeah.
as like a cinematographic, it was just a nice little
Little
touch.
nod.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
the way
Very
they shot
subtle.
that.
Yeah.
So I did like closing it out that way. So yeah, I mean, like all things considered, episode one was pretty great in my eyes.
Yeah. You know, it set the tone. That's the thing. As much as we, might be taking the piss out of the show with this
Mm,
discussion, the first episode on its own is a fantastic piece of cinema.
yeah, absolutely.
So, episode 2, we get introduced to Hector Ayala and the White
White
Tiger
tiger.
case,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of represents the first pointless story arc in the season. Eh?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was like echoing my comment about in episode one, Matt really putting faith into the legal system at this point in his career and life.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's really gung ho on, doing it the right way and by the book, I guess. And it seems like he's gaining some traction when he's explaining to the judge why the white tiger shit has no bearing
Bearing.
on what happened on the subway platform
Mm-hmm.
with the dirty cops. But yeah, it does. I think it's more just a motivator for Matt to inevitably
Take
don
up
the
the
suit
mantle.
again,
Yeah.
right? Like it's like, okay, clearly the legal system isn't working as intended because it he does have success,
Yeah.
but it comes crumbling down anyways because of corrupt
Mm-hmm.
behavior.
Which, again, we already knew that was that was the basis of season 3 already. We already knew that was the world we were living in.
Yeah,
As much as I enjoyed the trial and like as it was happening, it was entertaining to watch. But like we said, just when you've seen that already, when that was already the premise of this show under a different title, it just sours the rest of the season when it comes to an end so abruptly and so early. There's just so many things they did in the first episode and in this episode that created the basis for a really good season of television and a really good show. But they just bailed on all of those things way too early. And the case and Hector Ayala's downfall being the biggest example of that.
yeah. I mean, this episode felt like they were trying to do a lawyer show now,
Yeah,
where it's like a courtroom drama or something, versus whatever they were trying to set up in the first. That feels like it didn't really, like they were setting stuff up, like we said, but episode two was just a hard,
break from that.
yeah, hard turn into a different direction of like, let's just tell this courtroom show now.
Yeah.
And I wonder if maybe that's a piece, like you have the Muse thing, and then you have like this courtroom drama, and you have, the overarching Fisk and Matt political narrative, and it just maybe like pick a lane, guys.
Hmm.
Um, it's too much bouncing around, and yeah,
Yeah, and like the accessory scenes of this episode, of the second episode, were so well done for the world building part of it. Like the confrontation between Fisk and Gallo, and how we see the police commissioner standing up to this piece of shit and understanding that this corrupt kingpin cannot be a suitable candidate for mayor. Like
sure.
it's as much as I understand like the fear mongering thing, and he's really got the city and the public on his side. Like there are still intelligent people, like
Wanting the right things for the city.
yeah, understanding that this guy is a convicted felon. This guy is not a viable candidate for mayor. He's currently involved in criminal enterprises. Like Matt, I appreciate that the writers and the world, there's an understanding that Matt is not the only one who realizes that this guy is a corrupt individual.
Yeah, that would be insane, right? Like it's
After what
pretty
we've seen,
transparent
yeah,
from his history that he's, like
it's
you
never
said.
been a secret that he was kingpin. Like he's never kept that particularly under wraps. It's just nobody is gonna go after him because of who he is.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's, if you don't agree with him, then he'll blackmail you or
Which
threaten
is
to kill your loved
exactly
ones.
what we see with Gallo. We
Yeah.
see that vintage Fisk threatening him and manipulating him into doing whatever he wants. Like
Yeah, if it's
that
not
is,
threats, then it's like if you're not feigning ignorance and turning a blind eye to what I'm doing here, then, you're in my crosshairs technically.
yeah,
Yeah, but it was nice to see that someone still has some cojones to like stand up, at least initially.
yeah. That's the thing. Like I understand, I can respect that Gallo's getting blackmailed and that like he's gonna succumb to that. Fisk is obviously very good at manipulating people. That's not the problem I have with it. That's the thing I really enjoy about it. that Fisk is able to manipulate Gallo,
Mhm.
but again, like why wasn't it more of that? Why wasn't it Fisk manipulating the police commissioner, the city council, the like I get it, the fear mongering thing and getting the public to his side allows him to win the election. But when that happens so quickly in the season, you have the time to tell that story of how he is able to either manipulate
Amass his
or win
power.
over, yeah, the people in power, the people who can keep him in his position. But we just don't
Yeah, why not tell that story instead of immediately he's elected and we're led to believe that it's like, okay, just everybody like,
is has ignored what's happened previously and like there's probably a reason that he got shot in the head from point blank range and
yeah. Yeah, show us how you were able to turn the people towards you and change their perception of you or whatever.
well, and not just the public, but like the people who make this stuff happen, like the people whose influence is trickles down. Like the police commissioner gets the vote of the police, and you know what I mean. Like,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I guess he does kind of. We just, based on the few relationships he has with like that, whatever his chief of staff or like I can't remember her name,
hmm
Maria maybe. I can't remember, but yeah, she's clearly wrestling with what her motivations are, I guess too. Like she
where her
seems
ethics lie.
a little too free to kind of lay into what Fisk is wanting to do, but you can tell there's some conflicted feelings there.
hmm
But I would have liked to seen more from her a little bit. Like we do see
Yeah,
her push back slightly in a very indirect way by like tipping off the police commissioner Gallo.
hmm
Um, but I don't know.
but then she goes the other way.
Yeah, she's kind of wishy washy.
Yeah,
Um, and that would have been a more interesting relationship to explore to parallel like um whatever the other guy's name is there, the younger guy who's BB's friend who
yeah,
is Fisk Jr.,
yeah. Tony Soprano's son.
Tony Soprano's son, yeah, Gandolfini there. So yeah, laying into that a bit more. That would have been nice.
hmm Yeah, another thing that like if you had have done away with the relationship quarrel between Fisk and Vanessa, you would have had all that time to dive into these to the characters that we don't know. Like we already know about, even if this isn't the exact same world that we're coming from in the Netflix series, we still already know these characters, how they act, Fisk, Vanessa, Matt, Karen, etc. But there's no focus on, they keep trying to redevelop what we already know about those characters instead of, exactly like you said, developing the characters that are intriguing that we don't yet know.
Yeah, I think the problem is they're not like, yeah, I guess they're trying to redevelop the characters, but they're not doing it in like a
An
fresh
interesting
way.
way,
Yeah,
yeah,
like it's just rehashing kind of old stories and narratives that we've already sort of
yeah,
covered. So yeah, I guess lay more into like beefing up the supporting cast a bit and like playing off of that as opposed to just hitting us over the head with the same song and dance that we've already seen.
hmm
Yeah, I did like BB, like the connection to Ben Urich there. Thought it was a bit predictable though. Like she's getting in on the inside here, and then it's revealed later on that she's been kind of under a pseudonym, like supplying inside info. A bit predictable there. Like it's since
hmm
she's connected to Ben Urich, it's no wonder that she's playing the right side or whatever.
yeah.
But they just played. They shot it as if that was like, oh my god, like she's. We thought we couldn't trust her, but she's really been getting the inside scoop this whole time.
uh Yeah, I wasn't totally sold on her character, to be honest. She's so similar to Ben
Mm.
that it feels like I
They didn't really give her much to do.
True.
Like she's just like friends with the
Gandolfini.
Gandolfini there, yeah, Fisk Jr. But
Yeah.
she doesn't play a huge bearing on the story. It felt more like a fan service thing, like a connection to Ben Urich, just piecing together those two shows, I
Yeah.
guess, those two universes.
Yeah, I feel like they could have done some more development on her to make her a little different from Ben, just to have rather than like, remastering a character from the previous show, like you can have a fresh face and a fresh character to go along with that. But I didn't feel like there was much different personality wise between her and Ben, which I get. Like that's the point. She's supposed to be, that spitting image of her uncle, but not everybody, like you can't be the exact same person as somebody else. Like there's nuance to it that
Well, maybe even that's a loss. That was a missed opportunity to like really play up to the viewer why we shouldn't trust her. And
yeah,
then later in the season, have it be like, oh shit moment where it's like she was playing both sides, but it wasn't like, of course she was, kind of like
yeah,
have her do something to really leave a bad taste in
yeah,
your mouth
show
as a
that her
viewer.
ethics are questionable, unlike her uncle,
Yeah.
who was set in stone with his views and beliefs.
Uh huh.
And episode 3 too really just, kind of a continuation of that courtroom drama in episode 2, but they really just wrap it up after that. Like I mean it all kind of goes as you would expect. I want to say like the hero wins at the end of the day after a tough battle in court as opposed to it being like something physical, but ultimately loses, and that kind of leads us into we get that twist at the end with Hector Ayala's death and that tease of Punisher that really just doesn't. I
Well, it
mean,
just feels like they're exchanging Hector Ayala for Frank Castle at
yeah,
that point. Like it's just okay, we're done with Hector. Like we've done our like court inspired episodes because Matt's a lawyer.
yeah,
We've done our courtroom drama. We've tied that up in episode 3, just as you said, like an extension of the last episode. We could have just probably paced that episode in a different way to tell that complete courtroom thing
in
in
40
one,
minutes. Yeah,
yeah, in one episode. But I was kind of cheesed that they killed off Hector in the way that they did. Like I would have liked to see a continuation of his story and how he copes with, I mean, not only like almost going to jail, but now he's in a spot where like he can't pick up that white tiger mantle anymore.
yeah,
Like he can't don the costume. I mean, if he does, like that's probably, he's gonna get himself into a pickle if he does, right? So I would
which
have
of
liked to see him
course,
dealing with that as opposed to, yeah, like just let's kill him and then exchange him for Frank Castle now. Like
yeah,
let's just pop this other vigilante in here because he's connected to Matt because of the previous
yeah.
Netflix stuff, right?
Which like it's so funny how quickly they're willing to just get rid of one of these characters and like you said replace them with somebody else, and then they don't even have the balls to kill Bullseye.
Yeah,
Like you've introduced this brand new character and have all this work you can do with them, and you kill them off versus the one who we already know, we've seen the arc, we know what to expect from him, and it's exactly what we expect.
yeah. Bullseye's death would have been way more impactful than Hector's.
Hector's, yeah,
Um, yeah, I don't know what they were thinking with
thinking.
that. I yeah, I mean, I felt for Hector. Like it was like I liked Hector and like his death. You know, like I didn't want to see him go.
And it was shocking. Like I'll give them that.
Yeah, it
I
was
didn't
shocking.
expect it.
It was a good like tagline or like cap off. I mean, to a pretty shit episode, but it was like okay, like abrupt and shocking, and but that's not the shock factor. After the shock factor faded off, it was like, well, why? Like
Yeah,
you're
that's the
just done with
thing.
Hector, and yeah, here's Frank now.
Yeah. Yeah. Once the shock factor wears off, you're like, okay, well, what does this mean? Like, where did we go with this? And in episode 4 when we pick it up next week, and then it doesn't really matter.
No, yeah, this episode was definitely just, you know,
See ya. We're done with the first third of the season.
something to keep you occupied until the next episode, I guess, until
Yeah.
the Frank Castle stuff. I think episode 4 really solidified for me that I didn't like the whole therapy, marriage, counseling storyline with
Mm-hmm.
Fisk and Vanessa. I would have it really drove home what I was saying before about wanting much more of like a rift in the business relationship between the two of them. Like they have different visions of seeing how they can enact their plan across the city,
Mm-hmm.
and they butt heads over that as opposed to like hashing out whether or not they're meant to be together in terms of like their marriage and trying to reconcile with each other after being gone or after being separated for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
I just really did not find that like it is there was that sense at the beginning of like okay, I'm interested to dig a little deeper into Fisk's mental state and stuff, and what makes him tick, I guess, a little bit more. But it was much more just like their marriage as opposed to like them as
Mm-hmm.
individuals. And I just didn't care about their marriage. I cared about their business relationship. And
And you're right too. Like it's clearly the case that they have different views on how to structure this business,
mm-hmm.
how to go about their nefarious deeds. But like we see that already with the fact that Vanessa was making more money than Fisk was previously when he before he took his hiatus. Say,
Yeah, it was more lucrative under her.
yeah, and we can see that that's the case. So exactly like you said, why is the focus on their relationship when clearly the rift comes from she's better at this than you are? Focus
Well,
on
and this
that.
is if this is a true if this is like a confidential environment where the therapist can't reveal like the
Yeah.
context of the conversations she's had with her clients, like why couldn't they explore that? Like I guess it was more of just the answer is like they want to keep that more guarded and close to the chest and they don't trust her enough, but it's like why not explore that if it's a you have the ability to say, well, this is a confidential environment, like whatever you say here is I can't repeat. And then
Hmm.
it also makes more sense why the therapist might be more inclined to stay on as like part of Fisk's new regime, right?
Yes.
She
She's
she
seen
wants
all
to
the
be
dirty
involved in the business,
details.
maybe, right? Like it
Yeah.
gives her a little bit more depth in terms of like she's not just this romantic interest for Matt that's ham fisted into like this weird situation where she's also
Caught in Kingpin's web.
yeah, and kind of trending more towards his side. Like that would have been more believable if there was
She actually knew what was
conversations about
going
the
on.
business. Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to because it's like what does she just like trust this guy like because of the sessions she's had, like is he not like a completely fucking guarded guy to her at this point? And I don't know, it just like felt weird that she was even had any sort of allegiance to him.
Hmm.
But it could have been more believable if they had of yeah just made more out of those conversations in the therapy sessions as opposed to talking about their marriage, which is like this is again like just a waste of time.
Yeah. It's not what it's about.
No,
Yeah.
like you're taking over the city, it that stuff seemed too easy. It was just like things were like happening, but we were more focused on their marriage. It's like why are we not focused on what strings Fisk and Vanessa are pulling
Hmm.
to amass more power and influence? And
Yeah.
so yeah, that this episode really felt like again another missed opportunity where it's like why didn't you use these therapy sessions in a different way that added to the story you're trying to tell?
Hmm. One thing I really did like from this episode was Fisk and Daniel there, and that he was the one to leak the info about the waste collection union or whatever it was.
to BB.
Yeah, to BB. And, him owning up to his mistake and the respect Fisk has for that. I did really like that.
Yeah,
Showing like that the thing like he says, the things Fisk values that are so hard to find are loyalty and courage, and that this him owning
he's
up to this
proving
was
his
both of those. Yeah,
loyalty
that
and
was an
courage.
example of both of those things.
Hmm.
And that, yeah, there's no like, I feel, old Fisk, like, that kid's losing a finger, at least, you know what
Sure,
I mean?
making an
Like,
example out of him, maybe.
yeah, Netflix Fisk, that guy's, yeah, his toe or finger or hand or something is gone.
Right, taking something from him to really like put him on a leash, kind of.
Yeah, yeah. But I like that in this one he's like, no, that's exactly, like, he can recognize that those are exactly the traits I'm looking for. He recognizes that the mistake is not the issue, and the mistake is natural, that happens. The issue would be, if he kept quiet and let Fisk roll through his entire cabinet or whatever. And yeah.
Yeah, is it worse that he's on board, or is it worse to stay silent about it? I guess because
Hmm.
like at least if he was on board, or at least gave Fist the sense that he was on board, but was kind of like, nah, he doesn't seem like he'd have the ability to like keep Fisk in check, obviously, but just like sort of in an underhanded way try and disrupt his operations to a degree, or just like delay things,
Hmm.
or but no, it's really like I definitely get the sense that Daniel has a lot of respect for Fisk and has a lot of pride in working for him, I guess, and what that means.
Hmm.
Um, and makes you wonder about his, whether he really knows what Fisk is all about. Like, I'm sure he's heard rumors of Kingpin and what he's capable of,
Hmm.
but maybe he doesn't truly grasp like the danger he's putting himself in by aligning himself so closely with Fisk.
Yeah.
Even though he's given him the vote of confidence that it's like, hey, like I'm gonna reward you for that loyalty and courage that you're showing me, like you said.
Hmm.
But Fisk is just, could turn on a dime so quickly that that loyalty and courage only goes so far until you do something you really fuck up and then you're done.
Yeah.
And he tells him that as much, right? Like he says, like if you cross me again, like that'll be the last thing you do. So
Yeah.
there's still that sense of fear, but even with that, I think Daniel is
He's on
very much
board.
so like, yeah, like he's ready to bend the knee.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, he is.
But you do get the sense that he's like, his conversations with BB and like him having that relationship too. You're kind of like fighting for him to like see the situation clearly. Like
Hmm.
as a viewer, you do have like, at least to me, I wasn't like necessarily rooting for him, but it's like, this guy just needs to like open his eyes a little bit.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
he's too focused on like his own success and like what it means for his professional career, and it's like, dude, just like,
take a step back.
yeah, look at it morally here.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm sure he has that revelation towards the end of the season where he starts second guessing after what he witnesses
Hmm.
Fisk do and what he's capable of, his violent side.
Yeah.
That's probably a bit of a wake up call.
Hmm.
But he's in pretty deep at that point, so it probably feels like your back's against the wall. You've already been threatened.
Hmm.
If you undermine me or cross me, you're the
You're
next one.
screwed. Yeah. Well, and then we really get the Punisher stuff ham fisted in towards the end of this episode. And again, like, as much as I love John Bernthal and the performance of him and Charlie Cox, like, what yeah, I mean, just cool to see them on screen together, and like, it was a good scene, but
Yeah,
like
I
I said,
mean,
just ham fisted in there. Like,
Frank helps Matt confront his feelings that he's probably been pushing under the surface about Foggy specifically, I guess, right?
Yeah,
Like giving him the opportunity to release that emotion.
but like, you know who else could have done that I would have cared about more?
Karen.
The therapist girlfriend.
Oh,
Like that would have
yeah, it
been
would have
real
added more
good.
to their relationship.
Yeah, it just felt like it was like added for the shock factor of
Just having
Punisher.
Punisher involved,
Yeah,
finding a way to plug him in there
yeah.
somehow.
Just so they could have him in the fucking promos and the trailers and the IMDb cast list, so people could. Ooh,
Because
shit! I
they
gotta
still
see.
could have done Fisk's Kill Squad and stuff without having them need to be like an emulation of the Punisher.
And they even could have been without the Punisher being
True,
included.
true.
Like that didn't have to be. He didn't have to be in this show.
No, it felt like fan service for sure.
Yeah.
Bringing back a character.
And imagine that. It's fan service for fucking diehard fans who don't enjoy that. Like, I can't imagine we're the only people in our situation that enjoy this stuff to the degree that we do, that we're so unbelievably disappointed with how he was used. Like in the later episodes, I it's better, but it still feels just ham fisted.
For sure. Yeah, no, I think this season could have been better. Like I love me some Frank Castle,
Yeah.
but in the right way, I guess.
Yeah.
And to for them to do it like this in this show, yeah, it did just feel kind of gratuitous and like just for
Leaves
the
us.
sake of finding a way to get them involved.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it leaves a sour taste in your mouth for
I would
sure.
have liked, like you were saying, the therapist could have gotten that out of him. I would have liked Karen because they
Yeah.
set up in the first episode like there's some tension between them because of what happened with Foggy. Naturally,
Mm-hmm.
they want to kind of create some distance between the two of them because it likely whenever they're together, all they can it just crops up thoughts of Foggy and you get emotional and so to cope with those feelings and during that year apart and stuff, they can kind of get a hold of that. But once it I don't know, I just felt like there was a good opportunity for them to reunite. Not that they didn't in the season Karen comes back, but like have her come back, weave her way through the season a bit more where it's like Matt's maybe that even adds a foil to his kind of relationship with the therapist where it's more surface level and Matt's like really getting deep with Karen instead of and there's the kind of triangle between there adding a little more complexity to that relationship too and it's like I don't know why Karen seemed to be so underutilized too like she's a pivotal character in this story.
Mm-hmm.
There was more opportunity for meaningful interaction with Karen's character than there was with Frank Castle's, I feel.
Mm-hmm. For sure.